I was 28F, woken up this morning because the sheets I was lying on were wet. I assumed our child, 6F, had had an accident, but when I checked where the wetness came from to my surprise, turned out it wasn't her but my husband that had wet the bed. After I had taken a shower I woke him up and told him he'd wet the bed. At first he denied it, then I guess he realized he indeed had as he got this mortified look on his face, jumped right out of bed and started to try rip the bedding off. As we have pull-on sheets and our child was sleeping on the other side he didn't get them off. It looked stupid and honestly quite funny so I chuckled. He angrily told me it wasn't funny so I stopped. At that point the only thing his pulling of the sheets had accomplished was to wake up our child, who was confused and asked what was going on. He didn't say shit, just idiotically continued to try get the sheets off. So when he didn't reply I just told her he'd wet the bed. At that he just froze and looked at me with this weird look on his face, almost like he was about to cry or something. Our child asked why he'd wet the bed, and as he still was completely silent I went something along the line of that sometimes accidents happens. He just stood there staring at me. If looks could kill I would be dead, and I'm not exaggerating when I say he looked at me with pure hate. I've never been afraid of him, but for a second or two I thought he might hit me. Then he just dropped the things he'd managed to get off the bed on the floor, left the room and locked himself in the bathroom for about 45 minutes. When he came out he got dressed in a hurry and just left with saying you can take her to school. He didn't even look at me. His behavior really annoyed me but I just let him be as I didn't want to argue with him when he was in such a bad mood. When I got home from work he was still sulking, and basically ignored me. I was still annoyed with him from the morning so his behavior annoyed me even more. So I told him to get over it, that it wasn't the end of the world that he wet the bed, and to stop taking it out on me. At that he accused me of having humiliated him when I told our child. I found that utterly ridiculous on so many levels, so I angrily told him that he humiliated himself when he fucking wet the bed, not me. He didn't take that too well, and said fuck you and went off to his computer, and now he refuses to talk to me. And I just feel confused. I think he's the one that behaved poorly and immature and that I haven't done anything wrong. The last thing I said may have been harsh but I feel like he had it coming, yet I feel like perhaps I was mean to him? Ida? Edit, I just want to clarify that I did not tell our child to be mean or to humiliate my husband. I told her because I didn't know what else to say, and as it was quite obvious what had happened I thought it was just best to be honest. I didn't tell her in any humiliating way, just as a matter of fact without doing a big thing about it. I didn't think my husband would feel that bad about it. Update 1. I did feel empathy and I did care about my husband. I was gentle when I told him after I'd woken him up. However, his reaction caught me off guard, and the time from when he got up from bed until he'd locked himself in the bathroom couldn't have been more than a minute. After that I felt it was best to leave him alone. I know I was an off for telling our child, but I didn't do it to be mean or humiliate him. It was a stupid wrongful decision. I regret it. Further, it's not easy to show someone that you care when you're being ignored. I did text him after he left and asked if he was okay, but he left it on read. I asked him again when I got home but he didn't answer. I asked him if we could talk about it, no answer. I asked him if he could at least tell me why he was so mad at me, no answer. I gave up and went to make dinner. After dinner I asked him if he could stop ignoring me, no answer. I asked him if he wanted me to leave to which he replies, you can stay, I don't care. So I ask him again if he will stop ignoring me if I stay, and when he says no is when I had it. And while I don't think ignoring someone like that is okay, I know I handled it really bad. And I do feel awful for being outright mean to him. Anyway, I texted him early this morning to say that I was so sorry and asked if he was willing to talk after work so that I could apologize. He texted me back an okay around noon. We met up at home, and he understandably was cold to me when we met, didn't say much. I apologized for everything, for laughing, for telling our child, for telling him to get over it, and for the part that I'm most ashamed of that I told him he humiliated himself. He was just silent the whole time and when I was done, he just asked why I told our child. I explained and after that we just sat in silence in what felt like forever. Then right out of nowhere he went something like I scared you, right? And I told him that briefly he did. He said he could feel that. I asked what made him react so strong, but he didn't know, just said that he panicked when he realized he'd wet the bed, that it got even worse when I told our child, and that he just got so fucking angry with me for it. I apologized again for making him feel that way. He apologized for making me scared. I'm not going to go through all that we said after that, it was a long talk, but in conclusion none of us is happy with how we acted and we have both apologized for it. He wasn't that bugged about me laughing, but we both agreed that I shouldn't have told our child. However, he's no longer mad about it and doesn't think it's that big of a deal. We both think he shouldn't have ignored me like that, and that I handled it poorly and was mean. We have both accepted each other's apologies, but I still feel bad for being so mean to him. But all in all, we are on good terms now. Update 2. To begin with, as there was some concerns as to why my husband wet the bed. Since he was sober, I did try to get him to see a doctor after so many of you suggested he should. But he outright refused and claimed it was pointless as they wouldn't do anything anyway. He's wet the bed one other time that I know of, and both times he was rather exhausted and stressed out, so that may have been the reason. I don't know. This is too long, so a heads up to anyone who just wants to read about my husband divorcing me, you can stop reading now. My second post was written just after I had apologized. Based on the initial response on my first post, I concluded that I must be an awful person and I felt so bad for him. But to be honest, I never felt that my initial actions were that bad, and I still don't. I'm not saying I didn't deserve any of the hate I got, I surely did, but some of it was just vile, and some of the things I got hated for never happened but in the minds of commenters. But since outcome of my actions was so horrible and I never intended to hurt him, I felt truly bad I had. So the apology was sincere, and at the time of the second post I was happy we were on speaking terms and hoped we could put this behind us. It turned out I couldn't, and shortly after, I realized I was still bothered by his behavior. I also started to receive more comments from people who saw issues with his behavior as well, which I'm grateful for as it reassured me that it was problematic. What I omitted on purpose from my first post, as I wanted unbiased opinions, is that my husband can be a bit unstable at times. Like he can be very immature and sensitive, has issues controlling his emotions, anger, and he's so damned hard to get sometimes. It's likely due to mental health issues, so it isn't fair to him and I'm awful for it, but sometimes I just find him so annoying and exhausting. I guess I got called out on that in my first post. At the time, he'd been in contact with a mental health team for years, but if it wasn't for them prescribing his medications, he would have cut contact with them a long time ago. Anyway, I was already a bit tired of always having to cater to his moods and him not doing enough to address his issues. So his weird over-the-top and threatening reaction, in my opinion, to wetting the bed and me telling our child just felt too much, even though he was hurt. And as I wrote, I had never felt threatened by him before, so it did bother me even though he didn't actually do anything. I made some attempts to try to talk with him again about what happened, especially why he got so angry that I felt threatened by it. I even asked him if it had something to do with him wetting the bed growing up, based on some theories about him being shamed for it in the comments. But he just said it didn't, and it was clear he didn't want to talk about any of it, and I didn't want to push. He's so bloody hard to talk with when it comes to stuff like his emotions or relationship issues, which can be very frustrating for me. To be honest, I even had some thoughts about whether I wanted to stay in this marriage, but they weren't that serious. Then about a week before Christmas he unexpectedly made a suicide attempt, sadly not his first. I did not see it coming, and I still feel like shit for it, probably always will. His memory the hours before is blurry, but he's adamant he didn't intend to hurt himself when he left our home that night. But I should have known. Anyway, it was bad and for a while we didn't know if he was going to make it or what condition he would be in if he did. Thankfully he survived and did so basically without any long-term effects. The time after was horrible, and when he got to come home he was so unwell he was basically lethargic for weeks. As to why he did it, the short answer is that he apparently had a hellish amount of anxiety he wanted to go away, which mixed bad with his sometimes complete lack of impulse control. He's been very clear that it had nothing to do with anything I've done. I didn't know how bad he was feeling because he didn't tell me, or anyone else, and it's so damn hard to help him when he doesn't tell us how he's feeling. It scared the shit out of me, and it scared the shit out of him too. To the point where he, finally, realized he needed more help and he's been serious about it in a way he's never been before. So when he was offered therapy he accepted. Now the waiting time is a joke, so he will be starting in October. In the meantime he's been seeing a nurse and a psychiatrist. By April he was pretty much back to normal and went back to work. In the beginning of May we found out I was pregnant. It was definitely not planned and was a result of us fucking up when it came to birth control. Despite of all the obvious reasons why we should have terminated the pregnancy, we decided to go through with it anyway. It wasn't a decision we took lightly, but it was what we wanted. Here I can add that he was a fucking mess during my first pregnancy, and the second, apart from our 6-year-old we have a 4-year-old as well, was hard for him too. But for some reason that escapes me now, we thought it would be different this time. And it was, for a while. At 12 weeks we found out it wasn't one baby but 2 babies. I know it's awful, but I would lie if I said we were happy about it initially, but by then we were already set on having a baby, so we both wanted to go along with it. And after having digested the news, we became kind of excited about it. I'm 23 weeks pregnant now, and up until yesterday things have overall been quite good. When he got home from work, he was in a crappy mood. I thought he'd had a bad day at work, but when I asked him about it, I was served with an angry rant of how stupid we are for having the babies and that we should have aborted them. Like WTF, and when I asked why he was saying it and pointed out it wasn't a nice thing to say, he just replied, "Well, you asked and it's what I feel." I didn't want to talk with him when he was like that, so I told him we'd talk about it later. When the kids were asleep, I asked him what that was all about and where it came from. He said he didn't know in the way he says it when he doesn't want to talk about something. I tried to push a little but got nowhere, so I got a bit frustrated and told him that it wasn't fair to me to say things like that and then refused to talk about it. He was just silent for a while, then said fuck this and went and locked himself in the bathroom. When he came out he looked sad, so I asked him if he was okay and he said he needed some air. I was like okay and added something like it's okay to be sad, you know. He didn't like that, so he very angrily told me he wasn't sad. I know I should have let him be, but I just got such a bad feeling, so I asked him to stay. He didn't like that either, so he screamed at me that he didn't want to fucking stay and slammed the door so hard it woke the kids up when he left. I couldn't do much else than tend to the children, pretend everything was fine, and hope he would return safe and sound. I was so damned worried, so when the kids were back to sleep I texted him to ask if he was okay, and then I cried. He replied almost instantly, "I'm okay. Home in 5. Sorry. Love you," which eased my worry, but I was still sad and angry. He came back shortly after. He was clearly high, so he had calmed down. He isn't addicted. When he saw I was crying, he said he was sorry. I told him I'm not okay with him treating me like that, yada, yada, yada. He said he knew and apologized again. We've had that conversation before. I realized I wasn't even angry with him anymore. Perhaps I should have been. I just asked him to please not run away like that again, and he promised he wouldn't. But he probably will. Then he was tired, so we went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I haven't been feeling that great today, to be honest. I'm scared, disappointed, and I feel fucking stupid. My husband was in a better mood when he came home today, and he's been such a sweetheart. He even talked to me. He apologized for yesterday and told me he was disappointed in himself for how he behaved, that he's been trying so hard to behave like a normal person, his words, and that he was tired of failing all the fucking time. I know he's trying and he isn't failing all the time, so I told him to not be so hard on himself. I asked him about how he was feeling, and he admitted he wasn't feeling that well, but couldn't elaborate. So I asked him how bad not that well was, and said it wasn't too bad and that I didn't need to worry, and promised to tell me if it got worse, but I don't know if I can trust him on that. I'm so fucking scared he will crash again. I'm not sure I have the energy for it, not now, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't have it either. I'm hoping so much that therapy will help him, but I'm not sure what realistically can be expected from it. What if it doesn't make a difference? What do we do then? I know it probably doesn't seem like it, as my posts have only focused on the negative, but I love my husband so much, and I don't want to live without him. But I don't want to live like this either. I don't know, perhaps I'm just overly sensitive right now, being pregnant and all. Now on to second story. Confronted my boyfriend's jealous girl best friend after her cruel insults about my body and family, leaving our friend group divided. My boyfriend, Nick, 25 male, has a girl best friend, Julie, F24. Everything has been great between me and Nick. I don't even care that he has a girl best friend. A week ago, me and Nick went on a vacation with our friend group, that includes Julie. The first night, we were all walking from our hotel to a restaurant. When we got to our table, Nick sat down, and when I went to sit with him, Julie pushed me out of the way to sit next to him. Literally pushed me. I laughed it off and sat on his other side, but I'm sure I was giving her some nasty glances. All dinner she talked Nick's ear off. She has never been like that. The next morning, we were gonna go to the pool, so I was getting ready in me and Nick's room. I go into the bathroom to do my hair. I have 3C hair, so it takes me a while. After a bit I heard talking in the room, so I went to check what it was. Julie and Nick were having a conversation, Nick sitting on the bed and Julie in her bikini and cover-up standing near the TV. I came out and sat next to Nick on the bed, and they continued their conversation. When they were done talking, Julie acknowledged me and said, "You look different," assuming it was a compliment. I said, "Thank you," to which she responded, "It's not a compliment. I can see your food, baby," and poked my stomach. I grew up in the modeling world. I am still a model to this day, but growing up in such a toxic environment, I had an eating disorder. I was anorexic, and it still affects me to this day. I awkwardly smiled and went back to the bathroom to finish my hair. I cried in the bathroom, and I guess after Julie went downstairs to get a drink, Nick came in the bathroom and asked me why I was crying. I told him that it was nothing, but I wouldn't be going to the pool with the group and that he should just go without me. He protested at first but eventually went. Later that day, we were going to get some dinner and then go to a club. I wore a sorta tight, black dress. No cleavage out, it was about 6 inches above my knee, so not an extremely revealing outfit. Me and Nick ran a little late to dinner, so we get there when everyone is already sat down. We walk to the 2 empty seats and Julie blurts out, probably loud enough for the whole island to hear, "Wow, Nikki, didn't know you were okay with your girlfriend being a slut." This time I said something and asked her what she meant, and she said, "I just don't see why you always have to flaunt your body. Like no one cares that you got a barrel, so you could be a better prostitute, like mother like daughter." I guess everyone went silent, and she began to awkward laugh, I guess trying to play it off as a joke. My mother was a Venezuelan immigrant and single mom, supporting me and my older brother. To support us, yes, she did prostitution and put me into modeling, my brother into acting. She is not ashamed, and neither am I. I have never had any plastic surgery or been paid for any sexual acts. Nick immediately started yelling at her, and as did 2 of our female friends. She apologized, and her boyfriend, Caleb, said that she must just be drunk. I said it was fine and that we should just enjoy our night. Julie and Caleb didn't end up going to the club with us because she was too drunk by the end of dinner, and the night was great. The next morning we were going to breakfast together. Me and Nick were the last ones to get there again, so everyone was already seated, except Julie and another girl I'm not close to in our group. I didn't think much of it and went to the bathroom. In there I heard them talking shit about me. About my weight, I weigh 98 pounds and am 5 feet, my personality, and just downright calling me ugly. I flipped out on them and told Julie just to fight me already and stormed back to my room. All of my friends are mad at me, except Nick. I feel like she deserved it. Update 1. Why didn't you beat her up? I am in law school with aspirations to become a judge/politician. I don't need an assault charge on my record. Keep reading. Why didn't Nick defend you from the start? Like I said, Julie had never been like this. I don't think he was prepared that he would ever have to make this choice. She must want him if you said this. You were right. Keep reading. She must have lied to your friends, correct? You guys guessed this one too. Now for the update. I took everyone's comments to heart and tried to read them all. Me and Nick did not spend any time with the group today and really just had a day to ourselves. I brought up many of your points and he told me he would lose her for me. Apparently last night when Nick walked Caleb and Julie back to their room, Julie confessed her love for Nick in front of Caleb. The guys awkwardly laughed it off and that was it. Nick is totally open to losing their friendship because he plans on marrying me. We had a long talk, but here's the drama. Tonight we heard a knock on our door and I went to open it, and none other than Julie was there. Her words were slurred and she was cursing me out, saying more about my mother, and getting in my face. I don't know what came over me. I think you all fired me up because I've always been a quiet person and I hate confrontation, but I started yelling for her to grow up. She began talking about my dad. He left when I was 3, I lost my fucking mind. I slapped her and Nick said he heard it and thought it was a sound effect. It was really loud. She fell to the ground, dramatic, and began have a temper tantrum. I slammed the door and she called the police on me, but I wasn't arrested. Apparently she told the group that I threatened to fight her because she said that I looked ugly? And her little minion vouched for her. After she told the group that, Nick went looking for me and Julie followed him trying to convince him I was cheating on him. Luckily, he knew I would never do that. That's it for now, guys.